Welcome, students. Welcome to the Great Depression Notes. We're going to be looking at the causes, the effects, and President Hoover. Keep in mind you are taking Cornell notes. Let's begin. The 1920s is known as the Roaring Twenties, as we've looked at before. This is a technological golden age. Now, you don't need to write down the different type of technology, but to explain, we have the radio, automobiles, aviation, telephone, electric transmitter, a lot of new innovations and such. So this is the technological golden age in America. The market value will be all the way up to 381, which will be important when we get to the drop. Black Tuesday is an important event that you need to know. That's the most devastating stock market crash in history. It's known as Black Tuesday. Now, as you can see right here in the graph, the market does not drop to its lowest until 1932. The market will take a slow drop, as you can see here. So this devastating drop is not as low as it'll go, but it's so devastating, it's so shocking that it causes a lot of lack of consumer confidence. This is October 29th, 1929. The market value will drop to 260 on Black Tuesday and then trickle on down. As you can see here, there will be a little bit of pickup during the 1930s as consumer confidence starts to pick up as people try to capitalize on the low stocks, but the stocks will keep going down and down. Shareholders will lose a total of $40 billion on October 29th, 1929. So you can see right here a lot of devastated people. These are not just stockbrokers. These are not just people at the top. These are middle-class people that are losing their life savings. The spark of the Depression is known as the stock market crash. So the Great Depression, the stock market crash was just the spark of the Great Depression. Let's look at it here. Buying on margin is going to be one of the reasons. That's borrowed money. So what happens here, like we played in the stock market game, a lot of people are going to be borrowing money to invest in the stock market instead of actually owning the money. And whenever you borrow money or go on credit, it's never a good thing because you have to pay back that credit. Overextended investors. Investors were playing with fake money. So people were booking the money that was being made as real income, but it's really kind of a fake value. Like we've talked about before, when you own a house and your house is worth a certain amount of money, it's only worth that much money if you actually sell it. If you don't sell it, then it's just a kind of a mirage that it's that worth that much. Also, we have overproduction. So during the 1920s, a lot of production was being made, and they didn't realize that they were actually producing more supply than the demand was needed. And so the demand starts to decrease by the end of the 1920s for all these supplies, and so there's a lot of overproduction being made. We see this actually in the most recent recession that we had in 2008 with the housing market, as more and more houses were being made because more and more people were trying to become homeowners. People were trying to rent less, and people were actually selling their rentals to people because people wanted to buy. Well, there hit a peak, there hit a bubble where it burst that people stop needing the houses and stop being able to afford the high value of the houses. Hardships and sufferings. Many are going to be evicted due to non-payments. Eviction means kicked out. So because a lot of people are losing their money, they're not able to stay in their houses, so they're going to be kicked out of their houses, and there's going to be a high rate of homelessness during this time period. There's going to be people committing suicide during this time period, especially men. They feel like they're not able to go back to their families. These fathers feel like they've let their families down, and so they let them down, I guess, even more by committing suicide. And so there's a real sad scenario here. Thousands of unemployed are going to fill soup and bread lines. As you see right here, children are being fed by nonprofit organizations. This man right here being fed soup. As you see right here, free coffee for and donuts for the unemployed. So people that don't have a job, there's going to be a lot of organizations that are going to try to help out. Hundreds of people are going to sleep under newspapers or in shanty towns. As you see right here, this is a shanty town. Shanty town means makeshift or kind of a slum. And so, as you see right here, this is actually a picture of Central Park. Central Park is going to turn into a slum. If you've ever been to Tijuana, you've no doubt looked on the hills and seen a lot of the shacks up there. Really sad sight, and that's what actually happens to many cities as people are not able to afford rent. They start calling them Hoovervilles to blame the president. So these shanty towns that people start creating, these makeshift, these slums, people start calling them Hoovervilles as they're blaming the president for these hard times. Hard times are still hoovering over us, as this picture shows. Farms. So you would think that people on farms would be safe from the depression because they have food, because they have their land, but actually they're subject to the depression as well. You need to write this down. 400,000 end up losing their land due to mortgage defaults. Mortgage is what you pay for your land to the bank, and so a lot of these farms and a lot of this land is not going to be able to pay back the bank. What was happening during the 1920s is that a lot of farmers started mortgaging off their homes, taking out credit on their homes to the bank so that they could afford brand new equipment and expand their farms. But then overproduction starts to take place, and the farms are hit pretty hard. As you have these farmers that have all this brand new equipment, but they don't have anybody to purchase their food because there's too much overproduction. Then you have the hardest thing that hits the farms, and that is the Dust Bowl. Pretty amazing pictures here of all this dust that blows through. That bottom left picture, that's not a small house, that's just sunken in due to all the dust. The Dust Bowl. Many farmers were devastated due to drought and high winds. This is going to be from Kansas to Texas. The topsoil is going to be swept away. So during the 1920s, there's going to be a lot of overgrazing and not protection of the soil. And so what happens is that the soil becomes desolate. And so because there's nothing to anchor the soil down, it actually lifts up and blows throughout the United States. As you can see right here, it hits hardest in northern Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado area, and all throughout there. Those from Oklahoma will flee to California. And so actually today you can see a lot of older people here in California are from Oklahoma. So there's a connection there to Oklahoma because of these migrants that come from Oklahoma to California. They would call them Okies in California, kind of as a insult. Okie is not a very nice term, but these migrants here, they would call them Okies. The Grapes of Wrath, write this down, by John Steinbeck, chronicles a family's journey. And so John Steinbeck would be one of the journalists that's employed during this time period by the government to really kind of capture this time period. So he writes about a fictional family that comes from Oklahoma to California and just their struggles, the struggles of the middle class. This middle class that is undominable, this middle class that does not give up. And so it's a fantastic book about the American spirit of not giving up. Hoover. So you don't need to write this down, but you need to understand that Hoover was advised to leave the economy alone. As conservatives do. Conservatives don't want a hands-on government approach to the economy, and so he believed that the economy was just slowing down as it does frequently. So he did not think this was a Great Depression. He just thought that this was just an unfortunate thing in the economy, and that the economy was going to pick back up. So he tried to do very little because he believed the government should not be involved in the economy. Hoover believed the government should only merely encourage private groups to provide benefits. So he believed that it was the government's job to encourage these companies to produce what we call welfare capitalism. We talked about that in the past, where the corporations provide their employees the benefits that they need instead of the government. Later on, he does allow the government to get involved, but it's really too little, too late. Public Works program. When he finally does get involved, he builds roads, bridges, and dams. And some of you have maybe been to this dam. It's titled the Hoover Dam. Pretty amazing feat here. It would give a lot of power to areas around, such as Nevada and Colorado, even down to Arizona and parts of California. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation would be something else that he employs. By 1932, Hoover realized that action was needed and creates the RFC, but this also is too little, too late. This is a government bailout that aids the banks and never really reaches the forgotten man. What's interesting is that we really didn't learn our history in 2008 because we do something very similar. We create a lot of bailouts to bail out these companies, to bail out these different firms, these different banking groups and such, and they actually end up going broke anyways. And so what happens is that oftentimes these banks, they will give the money that the government gives them to their employees as bonuses and such, and then file bankruptcy anyways. So basically, they not only take the people's money, but also the government's money, very unfortunately. This forgotten man is the people in need. The forgotten man was known as the term for the American people, the middle class that really didn't get the help. The rich got the help, the poor got the help, but this middle class was really forgotten. It was too little, too late. So it's important to understand that action was very slow during this time period and never really got to the people in need. As government oftentimes does, it tries to do good, but oftentimes too much bureaucracy ends up costing too much money and not really doing what it was intended to do into helping out the people. The Bonus Army, last item here. In 1932, World War I veterans encamp by the Capitol building demanding their bonuses early. So these World War I veterans were promised a check in the 1940s, a bonus, if you will, for fighting in World War I. But this check did not mean anything to people in 1932 because it was just a check. These people in 1932 needed the money, not in the 1940s. And so what they do is they encamp here at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Many of them come from, as you can see here, Georgia, New Mexico, North Carolina, and so thousands end up coming to Washington, D.C. and camping out. Congress ends up vetoing the bill they requested, and so thousands leave, but 2,000 stay behind and still sleep at the Capitol grounds. And this sets up for Hoover's worst decision in his presidency. President Hoover ordered U.S. troops to gas the veterans and children, and so Hoover uses the troops to use force against these veterans and their families. There were children there as well. Now, there's no reports of anybody dying, but the irritation from this gassing, and if you can imagine just the sight being seen here, all these World War I veterans that were heroes of World War I being pushed around and muscled around by these younger troops, quite a sad sight. Douglas MacArthur would lead this assault. There was a lot of political maneuvering back and forth. Hoover really didn't want to use the troops there, but Douglas MacArthur would see it necessary, and so he actually kind of goes beyond Hoover's orders and ends up actually blaming Hoover for this event. This event would end up outraging many people, and Hoover would take the fall for this and hurt his re-election bid. So Hoover really gets a bad rap as a president. He's known as one of the worst presidents that we've had in history, simply because he did too little, too late. He really was a nice guy and did a lot during World War One to help out the food program and to help out Americans. But during the Great Depression, that really defined his presidency, and he really would end up being known as one of the least favorite presidents in U.S. history. Make sure that you review your notes, put the big ideas on the left margin, and also create a one sentence summary. Thank you.